Hey, hey, hey. Welcome to Dialogue with Dawn. Welcome back. I'm glad that you're here. I have some really great questions that I'm going to be looking at with you today. Please feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A, which you will see in the bottom of your screen. It says Q&A. You can open up that window. You can ask questions in that window. It was very wobbly. There's also a chat window that you could open. Just click on chat in the bottom menu and that will pull up the chat. But other than that, I am pulling questions from the actual network. But why is this so wobbly? Technology. Hope that you guys are all enjoying the online course or the mental training on demand, whatever, your hypnosis audios. I've been hearing some really great news and great testimonials, and I appreciate that. And I love it, as you can imagine, especially now that I'm doing more like online stuff. I don't have as many private sessions, so I'm not getting that feedback as often unless, someone sends me their testimonial or like today they came by my shotgun club. It's the kickoff of the shotgun sport season. So there are shooters traveling south through Florida, a lot of them leaving the snow and shooting at my club on their way down. So that's been cool to see some folks there. If you are going to competitions this year, you should be getting my emails. You'll see what competitions I'm planning to go to. Let's see. I will tell you right now. I've been organizing and planning my travels and everything. All right, so I'll be at Jack Link's. I'll be at the Florida Challenge. I'll be at the Seminole Cup. I'll be at the World English, the US Open, Night Stalker, Southeast Regional, and Nationals. So if you're planning to be at any of those places, I would absolutely love to see you in person and obviously hear how great you're doing. And if you have any questions based on those events and what days I'm going to be there, where I'm going to be, sometimes I'll have a vendor booth. Sometimes I'll have, my golf cart that's highly labeled with my name and who I am, and I'll, drive around. I will be doing a podcast with Jason Rambo and with the Dead Pair podcast at Jack Link's, and hopefully other events coming up. I don't know if any of you caught it, but at Nationals in 2021, I was over on one of the main courses, and there was a station with some presentations that were set by Joe Skull, and I kept hearing people loving him or hating him. And a lot of people were frustrated at those targets. And so, I've got Joe in my ear, and he's like telling me why people are so frustrated with that station and those targets. And it had a lot to do with the order that they were shooting that pair. And obviously as a target setter, he's very strategic in how he's setting those targets, and he does mess with people's heads on purpose. And he was succeeding at it in that particular station. So late in the tournament, I actually sat over there and listened to people. A lot of them, didn't know who I was, so they didn't know what I was up to. But I was listening to them, and some of them were, one squad would show up, and they would all be like, "This is horrible. These targets should have never been set this way. This is wrong. This is bad." And they'd go up there, and then they'd get frustrated because they're missing, and they'd turn around and they'd walk away. And it would be literally a few minutes later, a whole nother squad would show up, and they would be loving the targets, right? And they'd be like, "This is so cool. This is why I'm here. These are the kind of targets I love." And then of course that's feeding into the squad, right? Because somebody's saying that, then the squad mates are basically joining in, whether it was negative in one squad or positive in the next. And then I'd see squads where somebody just seemed to act like, the authority, like, "You've got to shoot this pair this way, the left one first and then the right one." And, a lot of the squad mates would listen. They would be like, okay, good. And they would believe that that person was in the know. Well, I knew from talking to Joe that a lot of times those people thought they were shooting in a certain sequence, but they needed to shoot it in the opposite sequence in order to have the window to break the second one. And but somebody's going up there and they're like acting like they know, and watching people follow that lead was interesting. Of course, at times there would be someone in the know, and there'd be a squad mate that was still going to do their own thing and would have success. And there were people that could break the targets in the opposite direction that Joe had anticipated. And we're like, that was cool. And like I said, some of the squad mates thought it was horrible, and they thought these other ones thought it was cool. So that was really interesting to me from a psychological perspective and perceptions, and watching people and how they respond to each other, and how they can put somebody on a pedestal and think that they're right, and how one person can taint other people's opinions, and how one group could think it was amazing and the other think it was horrible, and all that obviously affecting their shooting and their performance. So it was pretty fascinating. And I did do a live video feed from that location after observing for a little while. So I've actually been asked to do that with the Dead Pair podcast at Jack Links. And of course I said yes. So I'll be finding an interesting station with targets probably set by Joe. Of course I'll have the inside info in my brain. I'm not going to give away any secrets, but I'll sit there and I'll observe and hear what people are saying and how it's affecting, the mindset's affecting their performance, and we'll do a live video from that. So much of the mental game, right? It's really fascinating to see these things going on. Obviously there's a lot of stuff that I see at competitions that's pretty normal in my world, of witnessing people, throwing their shells and being frustrated at the targets, and being frustrated at their squad mates, being frustrated at golf carts driving by and disturbing them when they're trying to shoot, and trying too hard or getting anxious. It's one of the things, even as a mental trainer, that I have to read with my clients, because some of them end up trying too hard when I'm watching them. And I don't, as much as I'm teaching them how to manage the pressures of the sport, they're all at different stages of their mental game. And so at competition, that's not a place where I prefer to put pressure on, an additional pressure on somebody. At times I'm told, it's okay if you watch me, I'd like for you to watch me. And then I do. And I've seen clients fall apart when that happens. And so if I see you at competition, I might watch for a little bit, but I'll probably drive away to try to give you some of your own space. You got enough stuff to handle. You've got enough, of your own things happening in your head and your score and your squad mates and everything else. Then I don't really want to add to that. If it was practice, I would add to it on purpose, right? If it was practice, that's the time to practice these things, to get better at these things, to work under the pressure, let's say, of me watching you, which is, no different than any other pressure. If your teacher's watching, you're going to try to impress and try to show me what you got going on. And that obviously creates a lot of things. And that's fine if it was practice, but I don't personally believe it's fine to do that to you if you're in competition. So if I do see you at one of the events that I listed, feel free to tell me, buzz off. Great to see you, Dawn, but please go to the other side of the field. I understand completely. If you ask me to stay, I might stick around, but the next time you turn around, I'll probably be gone or hidden. A spot where I might still be watching you, but you won't know it. So that's the reason why. And hopefully you understand, but I do love to see you all and would like to see you at these events. And definitely come say hi to me if you're at them. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the questions that, look at my wiggle computer. I'm gonna zoom down my screen. And I've got 4 questions that were submitted. And if you've never submitted a question, anytime, I do feel like my lessons and my courses are very thorough. It was, as you know, it was many, many years in the making before I actually put that stuff into audio or video form. So I do feel like it's really comprehensive, and I give tons of examples. I rarely get questions, honestly. That's good, I think. I feel like I cover enough information that there aren't as many questions as there could be if I was a little bit more vague in the videos and all. So it's good. I think it's good that I don't get a ton of questions. To be honest with you, Sarah and my employees, most of the questions are, I can't find my hypnosis audio, or I downloaded it and I don't know where it went, or I need, I paid for this audio and I didn't get it. And then we're able to show them where it went. That's most honestly what we get in conversations. So other than, testimonials and such, or new inquiries. So, I understand if you don't really have any questions, but feel free to ask questions anytime. Sometimes I will answer them right there in the network, but most of the time I like to wait until this dialogue with Dawn so that I can go into greater detail. Also, I know a lot of people like their privacy, and they don't necessarily, maybe they don't even want people to know they're doing the mental training, but that network feed is for all of us to communicate. You can support each other, you can tag people, you can tag topics, you can give feedback, you can, you can be active in that network. Every once in a while, we try to stir up some topics. I think we could probably work a little harder at that, between myself and some of my employees. So maybe you'll see some more stuff going on, but definitely, that's available for you to support each other or ask questions and such. If you do ask a question and you want it to be answered in Dialogue with Dawn, there's an opportunity. What you're doing is you're posting something, but you can tag it with the topic, and the topic would be Dialogue with Dawn. And it literally asks you, do you want to tag this? So it's pretty easy. Okay, so let's see this one. I'm more and more seeing the importance of intermission. Can this be considered a ritual, or is the process too long? Jim Lawyer found the top athletes had rituals between sets, rounds, etc. These range from touching their leg to walking back to the baseline the same way. I've seen this in USO for tennis. Heart rates and stress levels went down significantly using these rituals. So yes, rituals, I'm going to go over that. Definitely have had lots of conversations with athletes about that, and lots of observations that I've made. Can you expand on faith and trust? Absolutely. Big, good topic for me. I love talking about faith. I read about first, second, and third order effects. Do these have a role in mental training, and how do we apply them? Very good question. Can you expand on intellectual humility? I believe it's important and often overlooked. How do we keep this in the front of our mind? Is this, it says virtual, but I think it's supposed to say virtue. Is this a virtue? So these are really good, deep questions, which I love. As you probably know, I'm a deep thinker and philosophical and all that. So we're going to get into some of this here. So intermission. Now, if you were with us in the last dialogue with Dawn, which was January 2022, I talked a lot about intermission, and I didn't necessarily get into whether it was a ritual, but if you want to hear me talk more about intermission, I would encourage you to go into the archives and watch the January dialogue with Dawn. So as far as a ritual, intermission. So we've got the post-segment routine, we've got the intermission, and we've got the pre-segment routine. You don't learn about these till much later in the online course. And the reason for that is because I teach the pieces of each of those, all leading up to teaching you the actual routines. So by the time I'm teaching you the post-segment routine, every element of it you are familiar with: the language, the skills, the the understanding of how to apply those skills, and the familiarity from repetition of applying them. So you would already have that before I say, hey, and here's where you put it in your post. And then I teach you the intermission, which I'm like, oh, and hey, here's where you're going to put that in this period of time between between your performances. And then, hey, here's where you apply them in your pre-segment, before a segment of time, your pre-shot, pre-hold, pre-round, whatever. So the intermission, it's mostly about being able to be present in a zone-like state, even though you're not performing the sport. So it's the time between your shots. It's the time between the stations. It's the time between the rounds, between the holes. So there is a period of time between your performances, just like a stage performance would have an intermission. A lot of athletes believe that you can only be in the zone when you're performing, right? And they think you have to put all this effort into being in the zone when you're in that box, when you're up to bat, when you are teeing off or about to shoot or whatever. And they'll put a ton of effort into trying to maintain that zone, even when they're outside of the cage, or it's not their at bat. They're over here, they're on the side, but they don't want to speak to anybody. And it's like they have tunnel vision and they don't want to talk to somebody. They don't want to hear anything. They're trying to block out their score. They're trying to block out any compliments or any, oh, I'm surprised you missed that. It could be anything. And so when they don't have a good, strong mental game, they tend to, try to shut everything out that could potentially disrupt their zone, their ability to then be in the zone when they're performing. But that's not how I teach it. I say that you can be in the zone anytime, any place, as often as you want, as frequently as you want, for as long as you want. And that's because the zone itself is the peak performance, human performance state. The ability to be engaged in a conversation, the ability to be engaged when you're doing art, the ability to be engaged when you're making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, to be fully present in that moment, to apply the best version of yourself to that situation. So that's anytime, any place, right? That's not just when you're at bat. That's not just when you are, taking your shot or in the station or, at a hole in golf. It's also then between. So I would say then, since the intermission is more about being fully present and engaged in the moment, using your senses, what do I see, smell, hear, taste, to help yourself be engaged in the present moment. The present moment at that time could be, putting your gun away, putting golf clubs away. It could be talking to somebody, whatever it is. It could be, the 7 elements of peak performance. So you are, making sure you're hydrated, eating right. If you're in the lead, or if you just took some bad shots or something, you want to make sure you're getting your head straight. You can actually do some invisible tool belt stuff. You can be looking at the ants, the squirrels, the trees, the breeze on your face, the sun on your face, whatever, right? So these are the things that you'd be doing during intermission, that you would understand how to do them and have practice doing them before you even get to the point of learning the intermission. So taking a look at all that, I actually would not say any of that is considered a ritual. It is, things that I'd like you to be doing but I'd like you to be doing those all the time as much as possible. I don't think you can be in the zone 100% of the time, but that's ultimately what I'm asking you to do in the intermission is to, it's not just about being in the zone when you're at bat. It's about being in the zone of fully engaged, not having to avoid people because you don't know what they're going to say and you don't want them upsetting you or something. Now, there are rituals that can be done for sure, whether you are in your pre-shot, whether you are in your intermission, whether you're in your post. So I could say, yes, you could add something ritualistic during this time. And I think rituals can be very helpful. Like everything, and I say this a lot, there's a light side and a shadow side. So let me give you an example. There's a lot of shooters that have this ritual of when you put the shell in the gun, as an over under or whatever, that they turn it so that whatever, the labels to the left, labels to the right, the labels at 12 o'clock, the wording's right side up, the wording's right upside. It doesn't matter what it is exactly, but there's this ritualistic way of putting the shell in the gun, right? Can be a ritualistic way of adjusting your ball cap and then your eyeglasses and wiping your hand, to make sure there's no sweat on you, like right here on this side, I don't know, there's all these things. And tugging your ear could be one of them. So it was said, and I personally didn't witness this with Tiger Woods when I was going to PGA tournaments, but there was a rumor for a period of time that he would tug his ear. Now, you could say that was a ritual, but the rumor was that he had a trigger, and that would be a hypnotic thing. That was a suggestion. I can't confirm that, but you can have triggers set to certain things, and those are associations. In hypnosis, you can do that, but you can also do it through repetition of doing the same thing at the same time in association with something else. So, an example of that's, if you want to say a bad habit, is people that, smoke a cigarette every time they have a cup of coffee. Smoke a cigarette when they're sitting down, reading the newspaper. Smoking isn't as popular as it used to be. But I've helped so many people with smoking over the years. I use that as an example a lot. But, if every morning you go and you sit in the same spot and you have a cup of coffee or you read the newspaper and you light up a cigarette, there's an association there and it becomes a trigger. Sitting in the spot becomes a trigger for a cigarette. Having a cup of coffee can become a trigger for a cigarette. And so an association can be done and enforced through repetition, like everything else, repeat, it gets stronger. And so you can do things like triggers, pull my right ear, and it's associated with something like confidence. Now that can take hold faster and deeper and more powerfully with hypnosis, the suggestion of something like that. But overall, that is something that can be going on. If somebody believes that when I do this sequence, when I do this thing, it helps me. And that goes right along with lucky tokens or lucky pair of dirty socks, or what do people do? I'm trying to think. They don't just call it lucky. What do they call it? What do they call that? Oh my gosh, it's not an iceberg. It's like a lucky stone, lucky socks. I'm trying to think what. Anyways, I can't think of what it is, but there's a word for when people do that. Anyways, so there's if you have it all goes back to perception again. See, this is a very complicated question and answer. If you believe that by setting my shell this way and being this methodical through my pre-shot routine that it's going to help me, then it likely will help you. If you forget to do it, then you are on the shadow side of that, and you're going to then believe I've screwed it up, right? Or I didn't bring my lucky socks, I'm in trouble now. So there's things like that could work for you or against you. Repetition of things can make them stronger. They can be associated with other things, confidence with a tug of the ear, Certain words can be associated, but rituals. I had a PJ golfer that I worked with once, and he said that in order to make sure that he had the right rhythm to his stroke, that he went up high enough and that he went down just at the right speed and that he had enough follow through, he associated a song with it that he said in his head. So see if I can remember. I love the beaches in Hawaii. I love the beaches in Hawaii. And so that's what he said in his head to help him with his stroke, his swing, and the rhythm of it and the follow through and everything. That's a ritual, right? If done correctly, things like that can also be a distraction, something for your conscious mind to focus on instead of something else. So you know that your conscious mind can only focus on one thing at a time, because I've taught you that, right? So your conscious mind can only focus on one thing at a time. It's got single pointed attention. You're best when you're fully engaged and focusing on that one thing at a time. And so if you give your conscious mind something to focus on, that's super great, right? So especially if you're focusing on something that's relaxing, peaceful, calming, versus I'm going to focus on this person in my squad that's annoying me, right? So if you're looking to shift your focus, making sure that you put the shell in the gun a certain way and that you turn it a certain way, like, did I turn it that way? Is it exactly straight? It can engage your conscious mind. The flip side of that is if you do that enough frequency, remember, it then dips into your subconscious autopilot, and then it's not occupying your conscious mind anymore. So you actually kind of can lose the effect of it. Hold on. I don't know if you can hear my doggy, but I'm going to let her in. She keeps crying at the door. Come on, everybody come in. 3 doggies. Everybody come in. Come on. Oh my goodness. This one is Popeye. He's my little handicap dog. He wears a diaper and he chews up my stuff. He was born, I think, like spina bifida or something like that. We just got him the end of October. And then I have Layla, who's 9 years old, a little medium-sized golden doodle. And then I have a really stinker that's obsessed with fetching. Her name is Grace, and she's a 6-year-old mini golden doodle. And she's the one that's crying because she wants to fetch. So, all right, so Rob, I'm seeing your question come in. What does it say? Like question, what are the differences between emotional detachment? And I saw that one come in. I wonder why I wasn't able to grab it. I'll be sure to go over that too, Rob. Okay, so I think I beat this question to death. Yes, there can be rituals that can be added, but I would not necessarily say that the intermissions, my intermission in sequence would not necessarily be a ritual. It's more like kind of states of minds and things that I want you to do to make sure that you're in a good place. That, like example, the 7 essentials to peak performance. Oh my God, the little stinker dog is now crying to leave after I let her in. All right, can you expand on faith and trust? So I'm going to go into another long story here because I've learned a lot related to faith and trust, kind of from the back door, not necessarily from the front door. So faith, it can be associated with religion. There's a lot of religious people out there that would be upset that I say can be instead of is associated with religion. But faith is so important that I don't really believe that we need to associate it with a specific religion. There is a lot of power in faith that can be part of your mental skills, not even necessarily totally about religion. So now I think whatever your religious belief is, it does add a whole nother element to the power of your faith, depending on, how much you practice your religion or your faith. But I don't tell people you have to, you have to be of a certain religion. You have to be of a certain faith. You have to do these different things. What I have seen, though, is that faith is extremely powerful. So, I'm just going to tell you my long story. So when I grew up in a family that my grandmother came from Rome, Italy, so Roman Catholic, was part of that family. And my mother just happened to be the rebel. So she didn't necessarily make her kids go to church. So, but, my background is Catholic. And where I grew up, there was a lot of Catholics. So up in Connecticut, well, my father was in the Navy. We lived in a lot of places, but that's in particular is where I was at this period of time when, I got older and realized, so many people were going to church, and they got asked a lot, what church do you go to? And I wasn't. So I'd be like, I'm not going to church. And the looks that I would get, I didn't understand that because I just wasn't raised that way. So, getting looked at a certain way, or people trying to save me, basically encouraging me to go to their church, because that's the one to go to. And or people that I just sense, like I felt like they were praying for me, like they were worried about me because I wasn't going to a church or their church. So at a young age, my late teens and early 20s, I was just like, I don't like the way this makes me feel. I don't like being judged like this. And I knew I was a good person. I knew I was doing good things. But for some reason, these particular people were judging me and thinking that something was wrong with me or something bad was going to happen to me. And so I, at a young age, decided I was never going to be like those people. Like any other decision that we can make at a young age, I threw everybody in one basket and was like, I'm never going to be like these people. I'll never treat somebody like that. And I don't want to be a hypocrite. And I don't like the dogma, and I don't like all this stuff. So I kind of, I always believed in God, and I always believed, in a higher power. And so I went on this period of time of just not wanting anything to do with it, as far as like, I didn't want to treat people like that. So, at times I would go to church, and I'm very intuitive. I have a lot of what's called empath skills. A lot of that helps me to help people. I can pick up on people's feelings and emotions. I can empathize with them. I can relate to them when they're talking to me. I can tell, from working with people, most of the time I can tell if they're lying, if they're being honest. I can tell if they're speaking from ego versus speaking from truth. There's all these things, right? And they're just part of who I am, but also I think they've gotten stronger because of what I do for a living. But also, I talk about this in my online courses a little bit, and that is that the more you clear out the negative crud, the more you clear out worry, doubt, fears, insecurity, second guessing, regret, all that crud, you have less anxiety in your body, and you have less fear in your body, and you have less worry, and you become more clean, if you want to say. I don't have all that tension, and my brain's not preoccupied with worrying about the future or regretting the past and all this stuff. And when you clean it out, when you clean your mind, you clean your body, because there's a cause and effect between your mind and your body. When you clean all that out, you actually are more intuitive. You can sense things, you can feel things. If you're not feeling anxiety and your racing heart and anger and such, you can sense, you can feel things. You can tell somebody's being honest or not. You can tell your gut feelings of taking a left turn versus a right turn, whether you can trust what somebody's saying. And I'm not saying it's foolproof, but it's definitely more that skill. It's part of the benefit that comes with doing this training and this stuff. So let's see. going on with my story. So, you know, if I went to a church, I could tell like there was this, I could tell when there was the preacher was speaking from truth, and I could tell when they were speaking from ego. I could tell when there was judgment. I could tell they could preach about, not judging your neighbor, but then 15 minutes later, they'd be judging someone for not going to their church. So anyways, it was this journey that's important to why I talk about faith now, because it wasn't just part of my upbringing. It wasn't just there and I never thought differently. It was a journey that eventually I got to a point where I started learning more and more about spirituality. He's itching. And realizing, I'm a very spiritual person. I actually started a group several years ago around here that was called an interfaith study group. And myself and some of my friends were like, hey, instead of judging each other and their differences for the different religions, let's start meeting and talking about the different religions and see where the similarities are. And let's look for the positives. And so we studied for several years every week together. And that was our angle. And, there are a lot of similarities between the major religions, the golden rule being one of them, love thy neighbor as thyself, and treating others as you want to be treated. There's verbiage for those types of things in all the major religions. And so, I've been on this journey, and in my early 30s, I started actually, again, just to be fully honest and open, I started going to Al-Anon, which is a 12-step program for family and friends of alcoholics and addicts. So, there is AA, which is a 12-step program for alcoholics. There is NA, which is a 12-step program for, Narcotics Anonymous. There's others also. I think there's some for weight loss and such. But Al-Anon is for family and friends of alcoholics. So, people like me tend to end up, in relationships where we're trying to help people and, what's better for them and all sorts of stuff. So as you can imagine, that can end up, in unhealthy relationships. And, but the 12-step program all across the board is faith-based. And for the first time, it was, your higher power. And nobody told you, nobody tells you what you should believe. Nobody tells you what religion. It's not a religious program. They'd say, your higher power, you decide what that is. And I was like, wow, I got freedom now to figure this out for myself. I've got freedom. Nobody's going to tell me how to do it, where to do it, what it looks like. I get to figure it out for myself. And so, and I liked that it was referred to as a higher power, because from a mental trainer perspective, I was like, you know what? There is a power greater than me. And when I stopped to look at it, it's like super cool, right? It's like an amazing web of things occurring, whether it's in the galaxy or on the planet or in, people, and there's this amazing web that's continually happening. And all of the cause and effects, which is going to go into our next question and answer here shortly. All the serendipitous moments, which I totally love. I love serendipitous moments. I love it when I'm thinking about something and then it happens. I love it when I'm talking about something and then that person shows up in front of me, or the opportunity shows up. And that happens a lot in my life at this point. And I love it. It's super cool. It's really fun, but it makes me stop and go, wow, I don't know what it is. I probably won't know until I'm dead, but there is a power that's greater than me. And it's cool and fun and amazing to watch it happen and unfold. And you can work with that. Again, you can work against it by being in worry and doubt and fears and regret and frustration and, having anxiety in your body and frustration and, all that stuff. You're working against yourself. Give me that little stinker. No, you can't have that. And so when you clear all that out, you do become more intuitive. You do see these things more because they are happening all around you. Let me see how old he is. He's 9 months right now. So he likes to chewing and getting into my stuff. There's all these things happening, but if you're too busy being pissed off, you're not seeing them. And again, that's what's really fun and cool about life, but you also can work with it. And it's really fun and really cool when you work with it. And I teach a little bit about that at the end of the programs, at the end of the online course. You know, and one day I'll probably make an advanced course where I talk a lot more about it. But, you know, you can set intention, you can manifest by being deliberate in your actions. Segment intending is a little taste of that, as you know, again, from the later lessons. So segment intending is using the power of your mind and your thoughts and your intention, and you have control over the direction that your life is going in. Wants to attack the other donkey. So there are ways of doing that, and faith has shown me, like, if from a mental training perspective, when I have faith, I am not worrying, I am not doubting, I'm not fearing, I'm not regretting. Like, just think about that for a minute. There are a lot of people that go to church, there are a lot of people that say they're religious, but they aren't necessarily practicing the principles. They don't know how to love their neighbor as themselves, right? They are taught that. It sounds, I mean, the concept is taught, but the implementation isn't necessarily taught. Like, I do teach things like that in my programs. And so when you actually apply it and you actually live that way, and you actually live with acceptance, and you live virtuously, acceptance, forgiveness, kindness, compassion, gratitude, when you do that, you are clearing out that crud. And faith is one of the things that will help you to clear out that crud. Like, if you have faith, like, I believe everything's going to be good. I believe there's good in everything. I believe it's going to work out for the best. I believe, I have faith. I have faith in myself. I have faith in my life. I have faith in my higher power. I have faith in the serendipitous of all of this. I have faith that all this will turn out for the better. I have faith in my process, you know, instead of, you have to be at this. And my dogs are being crazy today. So faith can be very powerful. And that doesn't, again, have to be about religion. It can be about religion. And the more religious that you are, the more that you practice your religion, not just how religious you are, the more you get it, and the more you apply it, and the more you live it, then the more that you'll have, you know, exactly what I'm talking about. That clearer mind, less worry, less doubt, less fear, less insecurities. And it's like passing over the baton to a power greater than you. If you believe in it, you have to believe in it. It's not just doing it. You have to believe in it. There is a country song, it's Jesus Take the Wheel. And I think, you know, the words of that song really portray what I'm talking about. You have to have that faith, though, in order to do it. In order to trust, in order to let go. Talk about faith related to your subconscious mind, faith related to your mechanics. You know, you trust in faith. Those words are interchangeable, and you know, you can trust, you can let go. That is the opposite of trying too hard. It's the opposite of your ego trying to manipulate, control, my way or the highway, all of that stuff. So trust and faith are huge in helping you to implement everything that I'm teaching, but it's got to be genuine. It's not just, that you go to church and then you go home and you don't know how to apply things. So it's truly applying it and truly living it. Okay, so hopefully that very long story answered your question. And yeah, I'd love for you to live in faith and trust. It's really fun. It's fun. Like, you're taking all the worry and all the crud out of life, the worry, regret, anger, all of that stuff, which makes life so much more interesting. And then you add faith to it, which makes it even more powerful and is a really quick way of getting out of the crud and all of that. Okay, so I read about first, second, and third order effects. Do these have a role in mental training, and how do we apply them? Okay, so let's look at this. First, second, third order effects. Okay, so when you do something, when you say something, there are ramifications, right? This action has a consequence. So there's a first, if you want to say, consequence based as a ramification for your action. So here's the action, here's the consequence. But there's another level, right down the stream, as far as a second order effect. I'm getting a phone call. And then there's the third order effect. So, sitting down, reading books every night, or reading a book every night. The first line, the first order of effect is that you learn something, right? So the second order effect could be that you're not sitting in front of TV eating ice cream every night, right? So if your action is reading an interesting book every night, the consequence, the ramification of that is you're learning something. The second order, the other effect, kind of a little bit further downstream, is that, what did I just say? Oh, that you're not sitting in front of the TV and eating a gallon of ice cream, right? So there's these other ramifications of your decision. And the question then is, do these have a role in mental training? And let me think about it, and how do we apply them? So, I like to think of dominoes, a domino effect. So I'm a big believer. And if you want to call it first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth order effects, right? So, this decision does affect things, forever, if you want to look at it that way. Yeah, you should be responsible, actually, to your words and your actions, because they will go down in history. Everything you do will go down in history. The domino effects, the wave does not ever end. There are many repercussions of the decisions and actions and words and things you do or you don't do for many, 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 many years. So, but as far as a role in mental training, trying to think. I mean, to me, it has a role in everything. So, being able to know that there are ramifications to all of your decisions is very important. And I would say is important to being mindful, being mindful in your decisions. And now, we don't know all the ramifications. You don't know the second, third, or fourth, fifth, sixth order effects. You don't know what those are necessarily. Why the reason why you're doing something may not be even, the consequence may not even happen in the first level. Like, you might think that, I don't know, let's see, I'm going to start going to the gym so I can get in good shape. Well, you go to the gym and you hurt your back, and then you're not getting in shape, right? So you can believe that I'm going to take this action and this is the first, this is the consequence of that. And that's not always true. So you don't know always what the first level is going to be. You definitely don't know what the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 10th, 1,000th order effect. You don't know what that's going to be all the time either. You can have the best of intentions. You can be very mindful in your decisions. You can try your best to offer the best of yourself to situations and your actions and your words, and hope for the best in the outcomes. So I guess that would be the role, and at least the kind of mental training that I teach is, to be mindful, to respond versus react. So I do talk a lot about that. Reacting is the knee-jerk reactions where you can have consequences that can be problematic, or the same old consequences, the ones that keep causing you problems, in your relationships, in your sport, in your career, in your life, in your job, in your health, or whatever it is. So I do highly recommend responding versus reacting, so that you can at least have some deliberateness in, hold on. Sorry about this, guys. Gotta let this doggy out again. Come on, all the wheels go out. Go one. They did not want to be locked up in here after I let them in. They actually happily just ran away. Okay, so that's the part that I'm thinking right now, as how it does connect to what I'm considering mental training. How do you apply them? So I would apply taking actions, the things you say, the actions you take. I just suggest that you do those as mindfully as possible, and let go. Again, if you think of that in sports, you can have the best of intentions related to your setup, your pre-shot, your plan, and yet still miss the target. So that's a perfect example of, here's an action that I believe the first order of effect would have been breaking the targets or making that shot. And then that one doesn't even happen. So then, you definitely need to then recognize that you got to let go. You have to go back to trust and have faith. Everything's going to be fine. What can I learn from this? That's your post, and part of your post. What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? Where are the gold nuggets? And that's about it that I can think of right now that would apply to first, second, third order effects. Respond versus react, and just continue to attempt to be your best self in as many situations as possible. All right, can I expand on intellectual humility? I believe it's important, often overlooked. And we keep this in the forefront of the mind. Is this a virtue? So intellectual humility. So I do talk a lot about humility. Humility is extremely important, I believe, for long-term, consistent peak performance as a human being at anything and everything, including sport. So humility, big fan. So intellectual humility is looking at your cognitive limitations and doing that with humility. But you know what? It's also looking at your cognitive strengths and doing it with humility, right? So I'm a huge fan of being confident, believing in yourself, believing in your abilities, believing in who you are, how smart you are, what you bring to this planet, the uniqueness of who you are. We're all a different combination of traits and skills, and some people are gifted in certain areas and some people aren't. And there's this bell curve of the percentages of people who are really, really great at something, or that really, really suck at something, and then there's everything in between. And so I believe that we should all have humility related to everything. That only comes through mindfulness, because we have ego. The human species, every single one of us has an ego, and it's attempting to do the opposite of be humble. It is the thing within you that is the opposite of having humility. And so you have to be mindful of your ego. You have to be deliberate in not feeding it, not, having confidence that's arrogant. It's having confidence that is humble. So just like everything else, I would say attaching humility to being your intellectual level is super important. I believe it's super important. I think humility in all areas are overlooked, not just intellectual humility. And not everybody knows how to fight the ego, tame it down, recognize it for what it is, recognize its agenda, which is separation, oneness. I am better than you. I'm smarter than you. I know better than you. You're wrong. I'm right. That's all ego. So it's all about separation and division and ultimately wars and killing people and everything else. But so when you tame down that ego, you're able to then have acceptance, and you're able to, look at all of our differences and try to have some level of appreciation for them. And in that would be the aspect of intellect also, as well as other things. So I think mindfulness is how you would keep that on the forefront of your mind. I would put humility on the forefront of your mind and try to apply that to as many different areas of your life as possible. So owning your cognitive strengths and limitations, having that healthy recognition of what you offer, what your IQ offers to the planet, what you're good at, what you're not good at. There's a lot of people that don't necessarily have the humility around what they're good at, but they have so much ego that they're good in one area, and then all of a sudden they think they're great in all areas, right? They think that they're an authority. That's the word. They think they're an authority on everything just because they happen to be an expert in one area. And I, quite frankly, would be amazed to ever meet anybody who would be an authority in all areas. I don't think that's possible. So it'd be great, to recognize you do have intellectual strengths. You can be really good in certain areas, but that doesn't mean that you're brilliant in all areas, right? So that would be a form of intellectual humility as well. So again, let me know if I answered that all right for you. All right, so I'm looking over here at the Q&A. Wait, let me just make sure. Yes, that was the last question there. So I'm looking over at the Q&A right now at Rob's question. What are the differences between emotional detachment and emotional repression? So emotional detachment is a good and interesting word. Going back again to my Al-Anon days. So one of the important things that someone who regularly goes to Al-Anon, again, family and friends of alcoholics and addicts, so people that tend to attach too much to another person's life. You should be doing this. You shouldn't be doing that. Let me help you. Let me save you. Let me fix you. Like all that stuff, right? That's being attached. So one of the things that folks like me learn through that kind of program is detachment. And what that is, and it's tricky when you care about somebody, because a lot of us in our brains, we think caring is helping, or caring is fixing, and caring is advising, even if they didn't ask for your advice, and trying to impose like what you think is a great life on somebody else. And so detaching with love is one of the things that I've contemplated a lot, and it has taken years to try to understand what true detachment is. So emotional detachment, that can be looked at in different ways, like other things I've just discussed in Dialogue with Dawn. There's a lot of experts out there that explain things in different ways that use kind of the same words and define them differently. But I would say, emotional detachment. Some people are emotionally detached because of what may be considered a mental illness, a personality disorder, right? Sociopaths, psychopaths, sociopaths. I'm trying to think what else. A personality disorders. There's two more. They're in the same category. So you got sociopath, which is the same as psychopath, narcissist, and borderline personality disorder. They're in the same little category as far as the DSM and therapists are concerned. And they have emotional detachment, like literally their brain, and this is a lifelong chronic thing, their brain is incapable of empathy, having understanding of how another person may feel. They will steal from you, they will lie to you, they will manipulate you, they are the best at it compared to any human on the planet. And they have a lot of emotional detachment because of genetics, if you want to say, because of whatever significant trauma happened early in their life that caused them to have this kind of chronic diagnosis or personality disorder. Emotional detachment is not able to fully engage their feelings, or the feelings for others, or having emotion, having empathy and such. So that can happen in very severe situations, but it can also happen, let's say, if you want to look at the shadow or the light side, it could happen deliberately and mindfully, like deciding to emotionally detach from a loved one who's a heroin addict. So do you want to be on an emotional roller coaster, wondering if that person's alive, wondering if they're ever going to stop doing drugs? If you haven't heard from them in weeks and months, if they're alive, if they're on the street, if they need anything. So you can be on an emotional roller coaster if you stay attached to that person's decisions and path in their life. So you can learn to deliberately emotionally detach. So that would be how I look at emotional detachment. And then emotional repression would be when you actually repress your emotions. And I would say that has more to do with having been hurt, not wanting to feel things. It's like repressing them. It's holding them down, not wanting to show emotion, not wanting to it could be sadness, not wanting people to see you sad, not wanting people to see you angry, not wanting people to see you disturbed, not wanting people to see you frustrated. So you can attempt to repress those emotions. Not that you succeed at it, they're probably still in there and eating you up and causing you illnesses and diseases and heart attacks and all sorts of sleep problems and whatever else. So what are the differences? Okay, so I think I've just explained the differences between those. So emotional detachment can be psychological, like chronic, diagnosable as far as unhealthy, very dark, problematic, detaching emotionally. A serial killer definitely detaches emotionally. So that's a sociopath. So serial killers tend to be sociopaths. Somebody who's so severely arrogant, to the extreme, that's a narcissist. And they don't give a crud. They think they're right. It's their way or the highway. But they're not just consciously thinking that. It is in their bones. It is in their blood. Like they are incapable of thinking about it in any other way. There's other like schizophrenia and such, people with those kind of mental illnesses, disabilities, whatever you want to call them, they can have emotional detachment as well. But the emotional repression is an attempt to not, it's an attempt to not let people see you a certain way, like trying to repress those feelings. And again, everybody's different. So there's different reasons why you might want to be repressing emotions. If you had, a really sad childhood, and maybe you had a father that kept telling you real men don't cry, and you might attempt to repress your emotions to not upset your father. And the next thing you know, 10, 20, 30 years later, you're still doing it because, again, repetition, and you've built that into your personality. And then let me just, again, in summary, say the emotional detachment can be deliberate and can be healthy. I guess I could say the same thing for emotional repression. So emotional detachment that would be healthy is, live your own life, stay in control of what you can control, which is yourself. You can't control others. Do not ride the emotional roller coaster based on what somebody else is choosing to do with their life. You would then detach in a healthy manner. Detach with love is how it's said. You would detach with love, and again, if you're a person who is a friend or family of an alcoholic or addict, Al-Anon is the place to learn how to detach with love, and it's taught me a lot. I've been an active member for holy cannoli, 20 years. And if any of you in the 12-step program, you probably recognize there's aspects of what I've learned from that are in my teachings. So the emotional repression, again, I would say that there's probably some healthy ways. There's some light side of repressing your emotions. There's a time and place for everything. So let's say, okay, here's a perfect example. Early in my career, I was a child victim advocate at the state attorney's office. So that was before I had a hypnosis practice. And so I was a child victim advocate at the state attorney's office. What that means is that anytime a child had told their parents or guardian or teacher or whatever that they had been abused, sexual abuse, physical abuse, it had to be reported, right? And it had to be looked at, but by the state attorney's office. We could not ignore an accusation like that. So before me, there was nobody in the position to advocate for those children. Like the phone call would come in and there'd be this very adult process that was very stark and solid and it's very serious and no warm and fuzzy. And, the child was thrown into that scene. So a child victim advocate, I was there to help the child through the entire process. Now, it could be, one meeting with the assistant state attorney where the attorney decides that they're not going to file the case. Like there's not enough evidence. The child seemed like they were lying or making up things, or it seemed like the other side could plant a benefit of a doubt and then the case wouldn't be filed, which was not very easy to witness that. But a big part of my job was sitting in on depositions. So I would sit in on depositions with the child next to me. My job was to make sure the child, was able to use the restroom, take breaks, got water, was fed. I wasn't there for a legal reason. I couldn't, object to anything or whatever, but I was there to caretake that child. And so I'm sitting in on depositions and I'm hearing lots of details of physical abuse and sexual abuse. Of course, they're being cross-examined in the deposition and questioned in every way possible from every angle, trying to mess the kid up, trying to figure out if the kid's lying, trying to, do whatever they could. So the children, I've worked with all ages, were, having to say the same things over and over and over again in many different ways. And so I would deliberately emotionally detach and deliberately emotionally repress. There's no doubt about it. Again, like, there's some people that have said to me, I could never have done that. I would have been a mess. I would have been angry. I would have been crying. And, there were times I can remember, hearing specific details, and I'll just never forget sitting in that room and having to turn my head and repress my emotions because it was not the time or place. I was there to help that child and not to be sitting there crying or something. So I think that's a really good example of detaching deliberately my emotions in order to be there for that child and be strong emotionally for that child, but also repressing things like wanting to cry. So hopefully that answers your question, Rob. And I appreciate y'all tuning in. Unless there is something else, I am going to say goodbye for now. So thank you, everybody. I don't see anything else. So feel free to look in the archives at the other Dialogue with Dawns, and also feel free to submit your questions for the next one. I'll see you guys in the network. Adios.